Principles Show daily podcast by and for you.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're taking a look at a topic suggested by you, our listeners.
Oh, that's always fun. What do we got?
Well, some folks have been asking about Russia and, all the internet censorship that's been going on over there.
Right.
They're wondering how that might affect Russia's relationships in the BRICS group.
Ah, interesting.
Specifically, how cutting off access to so much of the internet could impact their ability to cooperate, work together.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important question. This isn't just about blocking a few websites here and there. We're talking about something much bigger.
For sure. We're going off of an article called The Impact of Russia's Internet Censorship, closing access to 20% of global websites.
Wow.
And it's straight from the BRICS joint website, so you know it's relevant.
Absolutely.
And get this, Russia has started blocking Cloudflare. Does that ring a bell at all?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Cloudflare is huge GE. It's a content delivery network, a CDN. Basically, it's like the internet's postal service in a way.
Okay, I'm following.
It helps websites deliver their stuff, their content, quickly and safely to people all over the world.
Gotcha.
Russia blocking it, it's kind of like suddenly shutting down a major highway.
So 20% of global websites is what we're talking about here. That includes a ton of sites from BRICS countries too, right?
Yeah, think about it. If 20% of the internet is suddenly inaccessible, that's going to include websites from everywhere.
The article actually estimates that over 1 million websites from BRICS partner countries could be affected. That's a lot.
Yeah, 1 million websites. That's not a small number.
So what does that actually mean, practically speaking? Say you're a Russian business trying to work with a partner in Brazil. What happens then?
You're going to run into problems, that's for sure.
Like what kind of problems?
Well, imagine you're that business owner and you're trying to close a deal with your Brazilian partner, right?
Okay, yeah.
You need to look over some documents, maybe hop on a video call, use online banking to make the transaction, all that stuff.
Pretty standard business stuff.
But a lot of those websites, they rely on Cloudflare, so suddenly you're cut off. No more communication. You can't finalize that contract. The deal falls apart.
Wow. So we're not just talking about hypothetical problems. These are very real obstacles for anyone trying to work across BRICS nations.
Exactly. And it goes way beyond just businesses, too. Think about a Russian university student trying to access research papers from a library in India, for example.
Right, right.
Or a scientist who needs to collaborate on a project with colleagues in South Africa.
Oh, that is online these days.
Exactly. They could be completely cut off from vital information, from research databases, from the platforms they need to work together.
It's like they're trying to build a bridge, but someone keeps taking down their side of it.
That's a great way to put it. And it's especially concerning because BRICS, that whole point is to strengthen ties and cooperation between member countries. This digital isolation just seems like it's pushing in the opposite direction.
Yeah, you'd think they'd want more connection, not less. But hold on, this isn't just about economics,
Yeah.
right? What about all the cultural exchange that happens through tourism? That has to be affected too.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine you're a tourist from India and you're planning a trip to Russia. Sounds fun, right?
Definitely.
But you go online to book a hotel, and what happens? The website is blocked because it uses Cloudflare.
Oh, no.
Then you try to find some reliable info about visas or attractions, but a lot of travel blogs and websites are also inaccessible.
So you're basically stuck with old guidebooks or having to use a travel agency. What a pain.
It's inconvenient for individuals, sure, but Russia's tourism industry as a whole could really suffer. If visitors are put off by this lack of online resources and connectivity, they might just decide to go somewhere else.
That makes sense. So we're talking about potential consequences for businesses, for researchers, for students, for everyday tourists. Basically anyone who's trying to connect with people in other BRICS countries. Is there any area of cooperation that isn't at risk here because of this digital isolation?
Well, cybersecurity is one area that comes to mind. Might seem counterintuitive, but hear me out. Russia's actions could actually have some unintended consequences in that area.
Oh, okay. Now I'm really interested. How could blocking access to so much of the internet make cybersecurity better between BRICS countries? I mean, how would they share information and strategies effectively if they're digitally isolated? That doesn't make sense.
You'd think so, right. And to be fair, the article does say that this whole thing could create distrust and make other BRICS nations hesitant to share sensitive information with Russia.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But there's another side to this. See, Russia has always argued that they need to control their internet for, national security reasons.
Okay.
And while other BRICS countries might not agree with how they're doing it, they do have some shared concerns about cyber threats and the dominance of, Western tech companies,
Yeah, I can see that.
So it's possible that this could actually push BRICS towards developing their own cybersecurity solutions. They see what Russia's doing and they think, hey, maybe we need to be more independent too.
Interesting. So instead of cooperating more with each other, this is making them want to be more independent.
It's a possibility. Imagine BRICS nations working together to create their own communication platforms that are secure, their own data storage systems, their own antivirus software, you name it. This digital isolation could actually, ironically, lead to greater technological cooperation within the bloc.
That's a fascinating twist. Shows how even actions that seem counterproductive can have ripple effects that you don't expect. But let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture. What does this all mean for BRICS as a whole? Could this digital divide become a major, fault line within the bloc?
It's a valid concern, for sure. I mean, one of BRICS' main goals is to offer an alternative to the Western-dominated world order, right?
Right.
But if Russia is increasingly isolated digitally, can they really be a strong partner in that?
It's almost like they're trying to join a global marathon, but they've decided to run in the opposite direction.
Yeah, kind of. And this tension becomes even more clear when you think about the other BRICS members, like India and Brazil.
Right.
They've always been much more open to the internet, more connected globally.
So how are they likely to react to all of this? Could we see some kind of split within BRICS because of this?
It's definitely a possibility. The article suggests that Russia's censorship could create a lot of friction and make it harder for BRICS nations to agree on important issues. I mean, if you're Brazil or India, you probably don't want to be too closely aligned with a country that's isolating itself from the rest of the world digitally, right?
Yeah. It's like trying to build a strong alliance, but one of your key members keeps putting up walls instead of building bridges. Not exactly a recipe for success.
Exactly. And on top of all that, we can't forget about the fact that BRICS is expanding. New members are joining all the time, like Egypt, Iran, and the UAE. Things are just getting more and more complex.
Right. The new kids on the block. How might they feel about all of this, about Russia's internet policies?
Well, some of those new members, like Iran, actually have their own history of internet censorship. So they might be more understanding of where Russia is coming from.
So we could end up seeing a kind of split within BRICS, right? With some members on Russia's side and others not so much.
It's definitely a scenario to keep an eye on, and it raises a huge question. Can BRICS really stay united if its members have such fundamentally different views on internet freedom and digital rights? I mean, those are pretty big issues.
This really shows how something like internet censorship, which might seem like a technical issue, can actually become a major point of disagreement on a global scale.
Definitely. It's not just about technology, it's about values, national interests, even cultural differences. It gets complicated really fast.
Absolutely. So while there are definitely challenges here and potential for conflict, we shouldn't necessarily think that this is the end of BRICS, right?
Right. It's not necessarily a doomsday scenario. I mean, BRICS has had disagreements before, and they've always managed to work through them.
They're a pretty resilient bunch.
Yeah, they have a shared interest in changing the existing global order, and that's a powerful motivator.
But this digital divide adds a whole new level of complexity, don't you think? It's not just about economics or politics anymore. It's about how we connect with each other, how we access information, how we even see the world.
Absolutely. And that's something BRICS is going to have to figure out how to deal with moving forward. Can they find ways to bridge this digital gap, or will it end up being a defining issue that pulls them apart?
That's the million-dollar question. And honestly, we don't have all the answers right now, but one thing's for sure. This issue is going to have a big impact on the future of BRICS and its role in the world. It's a story that's still unfolding, and we need to pay attention to see what happens next. But for now, let's take a little break to gather our thoughts, and then we'll come back to talk about what all this means for you, our listener. What are the key takeaways here, and what should you be watching for as this story develops? Stick with us. And we're back. We've been digging into this whole Russia-BRICS internet thing, and it's definitely complicated.
It really is. There are so many different layers to it.
For sure. But before we go any further, let's make sure we're all on the same page. Can you give us a quick recap of what we've talked about so far?
Absolutely. So we're looking at Russia's decision to block a bunch of websites, including Cloudflare, which is a major content delivery network.
Right, like the internet's postal service.
Exactly. And because of this decision, something like 20% of global websites are now inaccessible in Russia. That includes over 1 million websites from other BRICS countries.
Wow, 1 million. That's a crazy number.
It is. And this has the potential to seriously disrupt cooperation within BRICS. We're talking about everything from business deals falling apart to scientists being unable to access research from other countries.
Yeah, even tourism could take a hit, not to mention the whole cybersecurity angle.
Right, which is what we were just starting to get into before the break.
Exactly. So remind us, how could Russia blocking all these websites actually end up affecting cybersecurity within BRICS?
Well, on the surface, it seems like it would make cooperation harder, right?
Yeah, that's what I would think. If you can't even access websites from other BRICS countries, how are you supposed to share sensitive information about cybersecurity threats?
Right. And the article does mention that this could lead to a lack of trust between Russia and the other BRICS members.
Makes sense.
But here's the thing. Russia has always maintained that controlling their internet is crucial for their national security.
Okay.
And while the other BRICS countries might not agree with their methods, they do share some of those same concerns about cyber threats, especially from, Western countries.
Right, like the US and Europe.
Exactly. So this whole situation could actually push BRICS toward becoming more self-sufficient in terms of cybersecurity.
Interesting. So instead of relying on Western companies for things like antivirus software or secure communication platforms, they might start developing their own solutions.
Exactly. It's like they're forced to innovate out of necessity.
So this digital isolation could actually bring them closer together in a weird way.
It's definitely a possibility. It's one of those unintended consequences we were talking about.
Wow, that's fascinating. But I have to wonder, what about the bigger picture? Like, where does BRICS go from here with all this going on?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, one of the main goals of BRICS is to offer an alternative to the Western-dominated world order.
Right.
But if Russia keeps isolating itself digitally, can it really be an effective partner in that effort?
Yeah, seems like they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot.
In a way, yes. And it creates this tension within BRICS because the other members, like India and Brazil, have historically been much more open to the internet and global connectivity.
So how are they likely to respond to all of this? Are we going to see some kind of fracture within BRICS?
Well, it's hard to say for sure. The article suggests that Russia's actions could lead to some serious disagreements within the bloc.
Yeah, I can see that.
Especially as BRICS expands and brings in new members with their own unique perspectives.
Right. We can't forget about the newcomers.
Exactly. So the future of BRICS is kind of up in the air right now. It really depends on how they navigate this whole digital divide.
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
And it really shows how something that might seem like a purely technical issue can actually have huge geopolitical implications.
Absolutely. It all comes back to those fundamental questions about national security, internet freedom, and the role of technology in our lives.
It's complex stuff. But I think it's important for us to be aware of these issues and how they're shaping the world around us.
I agree. And it's not just about BRICS. It's about all of us. We're all connected in ways that we might not even realize.
And what happens in one part of the world can have ripple effects that we feel everywhere. But you know what? We've been talking about BRICS and Russia and all these big ideas for a while now. Let's shift gears for a bit and bring it back to you, our listener. Why should you care about any of this? How does it affect your life? We'll explore that right after the break. All right, so we're back and ready to connect all these dots. We've been talking about Russia, BRICS, and this whole internet censorship situation. But why should you, our listener, even care about all of this? It seems pretty far removed from most people's everyday lives, right?
Yeah, it can seem that way, for sure. I mean, it's easy to think, oh, that's happening over there. It's not really my problem. But here's the thing. Our world is so interconnected these days. What happens in one place can have ripple effects that we feel everywhere.
Okay, so you're saying that even if we're not directly involved in BRICS or international politics, this stuff can still affect us. But how?
Well, think about it. Global supply chains, the things we buy, the products we use every day, they often come from all over the world. Disruptions in one part of that chain, like, say, a trade conflict between BRICS countries, could end up impacting what's available on our store shelves.
Oh, okay. So if Russia can't access websites from Brazil,
Yeah.
that could mess up the flow of goods between those countries. And then eventually that could affect what we see here in our own stores.
Exactly. And it's not just about physical goods either. Think about information. The news we read, the social media posts we see, it all comes from sources all over the world.
True.
If countries start isolating themselves digitally, it could create these echo chambers where people are only exposed to information that reinforces their existing beliefs. It can make it harder to have productive conversations and find common ground.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's not just about economics or politics. It's about how we understand the world, how we communicate with each other, and even how we form our own opinions.
Exactly. And that brings me to another important takeaway from this whole discussion: media literacy.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
We are constantly bombarded with information from all sides, and it's more important than ever to be able to critically evaluate what we're seeing and hearing.
So we shouldn't just blindly believe everything we read online or see on the news. We need to actually think for ourselves.
Exactly. Ask questions, consider different perspectives, and be aware of potential biases.
Don't just accept things at face value. Do your own research, dig a little deeper, and try to get a more complete picture of what's going on.
That's the key. And thinking about this whole BRICS situation, it really highlights the importance of open dialogue and collaboration. The world is facing some pretty big challenges right now, and we're not going to be able to solve them if everyone is just retreating into their own corners.
Yeah, like climate change, for example. That's not something any one country can fix on its own.
Exactly. We need countries to be able to talk to each other, to share ideas, and to work together to find solutions.
And this digital isolation stuff, it just makes that so much harder.
It does. But, on a more hopeful note, I think this whole situation also shows how resilient we can be as humans. Even in the face of these challenges, people are still finding ways to connect with each other, to share information, and to build bridges across borders.
So you're saying there's still hope for BRICS and for the future of global cooperation in general?
I think so. I mean, it's not going to be easy, and there will be bumps along the way, but ultimately, I think our desire to connect with each other is stronger than any technological barrier.
Well, that's a nice thought to end on.
It is, and it kind of goes back to what we were saying before about media literacy. Don't just focus on the negative. Look for the positive stories, too. There are amazing things happening all over the world, and it's important to celebrate those and to draw inspiration from them.
Absolutely. So to wrap things up, we've talked about a lot of complex issues today, but the key takeaways, I think, are these. First, stay informed about what's going on in the world, even if it seems far away. Second, be critical of the information you're consuming, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And finally, don't lose hope. Even in the face of division and isolation, there are always people working to build a better future.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. Until next time.